What's up, guys? My name's Mike. This is All Things Fish, and thanks for tuning in. I know the past couple weeks you haven't seen me around a whole lot. Been missing out on live streams. I was doing kind of a family vacation type deal, so I was gone for that. As such, since I was gone, I was away from the house, wasn't able to make some videos. So I appreciate you being patient and hanging in there. But here we are. I'm home for the foreseeable future, meaning the next few weeks. We're gonna get back into the live streams, the Aquatic Exchange live stream every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, usually with Priscilla MK from Swiss Aquatics. Sometimes we have some new guests on there, but make sure you check us out. In order to not miss that, make sure that you are subscribed and you also hit the bell. That bell means that you're signing up for notifications so that you know when we're going live and when I publish new content. Maybe you've missed a couple of the videos. Make sure you hit the playlists. Each week I try to update the this week's videos playlist so that you can kind of just hit the recent stuff. I also have various other playlists such as unboxings, etc., the live streams that are also in the playlist section on my channel. So make sure you check those out so you haven't missed out on any content. Getting a lot of good feedback from people I've talked to. I kind of try to reach out, in the live streams. A bunch of people comment, "Hey, love your stuff. I think you're doing some great things." I also try to reach out via messages or emails to see what people are thinking, and I'm getting some good feedback so far from the content that I have put out. So you can expect to see more and hopefully better content along the way. But speaking of video content, without further ado, let's get into the point of this video, which is what my weekly water change routine or weekly maintenance looks like on my 125-gallon planted display tank. So let's get to it. Let's get right into it. This is my 125-gallon planted display tank set up in my living room. As you can see, it's not drilled for overflows, so I run two Aquatop CF500 canister filters, as well as a 10-pound CO2 setup using a 10-pound aluminum CO2 cylinder and a Milwaukee MA957 regulator using a DIY Rex Grigg style inline reactor plumbed into one of the canister filters. Now this will just give you a quick look at my weekly maintenance routine on this tank. As you can see, I generally just use a Python using a siphon instead of running the actual sink water, just simply to my bathroom drain or outside to water the lawn. I do this just to save on water, and I'm not necessarily in a hurry to move the water out of the tank. While the tank is draining, I like to use my mag float to scrub any algae that I can see on the glass. Additionally, throughout the week, every time I walk by the tank, you usually see me just take a quick sweep of the glass with that mag float. It's easy. I don't have to get my hands wet, and it just helps keep things clean. Additionally, I like to use a toothbrush to brush off some of the hard surfaces in the tanks, such as driftwood, rocks, and other hardscape, just to try to help keep things a little bit cleaner. The more you stay on top of the algae that's in your tank, the less algae problems you'll have, and eventually you may find that if with a little manual removal here and there, you actually won't have any algae problems eventually anyway. Additionally, I'll use my Python to do a quick sweep over the substrate, while we may reference it as a gravel vac. As you can see in this tank, I have several bags of 88 Amazonia aqua soil. Now, while this soil is pelletized, it will slowly break down over time, so I try to run the gravel vac through some of the substrate to remove any detritus, some of that breaking down soil, etc., just to try to keep any decaying organics out of the tank. Those decaying organics will release various enzymes and other compounds that can trigger algae growth, as well as create a nutrient source for some of that algae. After I vacuum the gravel, I like to go in and kind of brush things around, do any manual removal just with my hands. Sometimes you'll see little bits of like blackbeard algae or maybe some hair algae that may be growing on a few pieces of hardscape or some of the leaves in your tank. So just using your hands is an easy way to remove any of that stuff and avoid it from becoming a potential problem. Here you can see me using some
tongs just from a cheap aquascaping set to go in and kind of poke around and dig around in those leaves, keep things moving. And you'll notice that I actually, while I do a water change, I try to leave my filters running as much as possible. And this just keeps the water in the tank moving around, so any of that debris or dirt or whatever that I do stir up in the tank, some of that algae that I may scrape and brush off surfaces, that keeps that floating up in the water column, so that as that python is siphoning some of that water out of there, it removes it from the water column as opposed to allowing it to settle down in some areas that I may have just cleaned. Additionally, you may see that I move a couple plants around here and there using the same tongs as before, and I'll take a minute or two to trim any stems that I may just deem as overgrowth that I really don't want in the tank themselves. Or I occasionally find some pieces of different plants that may be showing some algae growth or a little bit of decay, so I'll go ahead and trim those off at this time. Again, those dying leaves will be decaying, they'll be releasing enzymes and some other various nutrients that will trigger algae growth around where that leaf is rotting or decaying. So I try to stay on top of removing any dead or damaged leaves in my aquarium. As you can see here, currently just kind of thinning out some of the Hygrophila deformis variegated, and that is kind of your standard water wisteria, but it'll actually kind of grow white along the center of the veins on each of those leaves. So generally, I try to do roughly between 30% and 50% water changes. I do dose this tank using the estimated index method, which generally calls or suggests a 50% water change at the end of the week to reset your nutrient levels. However, I tend to dose a little bit leaner, so I usually on this tank I'll use a 30% water change, roughly does just fine. As you can see here, I store the water. I use straight RODI in this tank, so single digit TDS in the tank, and I just pump that into a storage barrel on wheels. That's a brute. It's a roughly 35-gallon brute container that I roll over to the tank, and then I use a little Rio submersible pump to pump that up into the tank. I did build a PVC spray bar for when I do pump water into the tank. That just keeps some of the disruption down so that I'm not stirring up any of that substrate and limiting, kind of the splashing and whatnot, particularly when I do a little bit larger water changes. So usually it only takes me a few minutes to fill the tank. When I drain the tank, like I said, this is a 125-gallon tank. I'm changing approximately 30 to 35 gallons of water. It's, pretty common for that to take less than 30 minutes, including the additional little maintenance that I do while it drains and fills. And here you can see that I choose to use the estimated index dry salts from Colin Grice at Nylock G. It's www.nylockg.com, and I'll just mix those usually in a little bit of tank water. So you'll do your micros one day, macros the next. I do dose 6 days a week, taking the 7th day off, just kind of your standard estimated index regime. Like I said, I do dose a little bit lean, so I cut it back just a little bit, and I actually cut back more on the nitrates, just because I find that with this tank, using the suggested nitrate dosing regime, that just gives me a little more nitrates than I'm after. So I'll go ahead and mix those up in a container, dump those in the tank. Again, I do have the filters running, so that disperses the nutrients throughout the tank. Any of those salts that may have not been dissolved, now they'll float around the tank and settle in various places, which is just fine. Eventually they'll dissolve away. And now that the tank is getting a little bit closer to being filled up, I had my hands in there, I was trimming some plants, I was brushing up against some plants, I may have damaged some, I may have knocked off some leaves. Not a big deal. I'll go ahead and, like I said, I try to avoid leaving any loose leaves or decaying matter or dead leaves in the tank, so I'll go ahead and just take a net and give the tank a quick sweep back and forth, trying to scoop out any of those loose leaves and potentially any major debris that may be left in the water column. As you can see here, the tank is filled up. Shut off the pump, close off the valve on my spray bar, give it a little bit of a wipe down, and for the most part, the water change itself is complete. Again, you go ahead and see me just picking out a few loose leaves here and there, wiping off the outside of the tank, just kind of tidying things up a little bit before we call it a day. And you know, a lot of people worry that planted tanks are high maintenance, or that with a larger tank like this 125 that it takes more time to maintain it. And it can be true. However, if you stay on top of that and you develop a regime that works for you and allows you to be consistent, like I said, this tank takes me maybe 30 minutes a week to maintain. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not great, but I think it's in pretty decent shape. And then usually after a water change, I'll go ahead and give those fish some food for dealing with the pain of me messing around in the tank there. And as you can see, these Chilathrina alleni Wapoga collection point do appreciate having a little something to chow on. Now, some of the extra maintenance that I don't necessarily do every week includes some of those heavy trimmings, which I will show you at a later time. But that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you being here. And if you have any questions on my maintenance routine or my water change schedule, feel free to message me. Find me on Facebook using the Get Gills Facebook group, or email me at mike.allthingsfish@gmail.com. And I would love to answer your questions. Until next time, stay tuned. Hopefully we'll see you on Tuesday night for the live stream. But if we do not, catch us on the replay, and keep your eyes open for more content. The fish build is coming along, and you get a look at that here in just a day or two. Have a great day.